Okay. Well, thank you everybody to be here tonight with us. This night is the second talk we are holding within this design week, and we shall thank you ICA Group and San Lorenzo Yachting, which are our two sponsors for these talks and nights. And I shall also thank you the three guests tonight, which are a very interesting group of people coming from three different continents, trying to discuss how design can influence social sustainability across our projects, and be interesting to hear from totally different perspectives. We have Fabiana Macccarini with us, which is the head of strategy with P&O Marinas in Dubai. We have Carlos Madrid, a associate principal at Skidmore and Merrill from the Los Angeles office. And we have Giuseppe Noto, the CEO of Marina Development Corporation, they are developers, and they are developing two projects in this country, and we will discuss, I guess, their ideas tonight. Yesterday, we focused on sustainability offshore, we can say. So we had San Lorenzo Yachting and Patricio Orchiola discussing the matter. Today, we jump ashore and try to discuss how maritime infrastructure can help urban sustainable development, and we'll try and focus sustainability. I'd love to start with Fabiana, if I could, and as she is working in Dubai, which is kind of a new city, and where I guess sea has always been a great resource across centuries for trading, for many things. And they are now working, developing, and managing marinas in Dubai. And because also the past 15 years, I was wondering whether Dubai is actually leveraging on nature and the sea, or also exploiting the sea. And how this goes with a sustainable approach from today on, working in such a region.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Leonardo, and thank you everybody for coming. So I would say that yes, Dubai and in general the Middle East is not originally, I mean, it's not very famous to be sustainable because of course when we think about Dubai, we immediately think to we were used to think about, you know, big buildings and a lot of offshore islands, reclamation, a lot of projects that really wanted to add some new development to what was existing. And there was not so much focus to recover or to reevaluate what was already existing. So based on my experience, I'm here, I'm in Dubai since now more than 10 years. I could see a big change in the government direction. So I personally work for a government company. So in the last 10 years, definitely there is a much more sensitivity to sustainability project to kind of renovate what is already existing. And the project that I'm personally working on is a clear example of that, because we started, first of all, P&O Marinas is a subsidiary company of DP World that stands for Dubai Ports World. So DP World owns and manages more than 85 ports, commercial ports in the world. And in Dubai, we started a kind of pilot project with Port Rashid that was originally a commercial port in the middle of the city that, of course, became, as many other parts of the world, became obsolete to be a commercial port, because it's a commercial port in the middle of the historical center. So the ships became more and more logistically difficult to handle. So what happened in Dubai and what is happening all over the world is that commercial port needs to be dislocated somewhere else in some industrial areas. So you have this original historical port that is in the middle of the city. and is kind of abandoned and is industrial. So what we did was to start to think as a new waterfront. So our sustainable approach was to recover the area that was not used anymore as a commercial spot, and we started to redesign and to rethink about that part of the city to be back to the citizen, to reconnect the citizen and the tourism with that part of the city. So it was the first project actually that was not a Dubai kind of standard project, like a new, let me pass the word, a new fake area, a new island, a new reclamation project that is not sustainable, because when you reclaim island, I mean, you completely, you interact with an hydrodynamic coastal system that is not easy to handle. I mean, the Palm Islands, all these famous projects are definitely changing, definitely did change a lot of the hydrodynamics and the growth and the marine environment. So with this project, we try to see what was already available and how we could re-beautify and give back to the citizen, and to reconnect between the old town and the sea. The port, the conversion of the port is not just a marina. The port has been always a strategic point from a urban perspective. I mean, all the city around the world develop around the ports, because of course there is the trade center, and so in a port you have a different kind of lifestyle. So you have fishing aspect, you have cruise ship, you have yachting and boating, that this is what we are focusing on. So what we are trying to do is create the hub that is kind of hosting all the kind of segments, different users, different activities, and citizens as well, to enjoy the waterfront activities. So I think that our sustainable approach was, first of all, to requalify an urban area that was otherwise was not used anymore. It was just abandoned, and we also try to attract more and more activities that are connected to the sea. So the harbor become a place where people continue to live, to work, to enjoy, to spend more time, and is connecting the city to the sea. So that's the kind of sustainability approach that we have. It's more cultural, it's more lifestyle sustainable approach.
Well, it's interesting. I put down 4 words, and which I wouldn't expect 10 years ago to come from Dubai. I wrote, there's a partially repurposing of the actual use of the seaside. You talked about a kind of mixed use, although you were talking about uses of the actual port and the water, not just necessarily the buildings. You never mentioned buildings, which is sort of has trapped me a bit. And you talked about urban spaces and spaces for citizens. And I love citizens much more than community, I have to say. It's far more general and inclusive in my particular view. And it's like in a way, it was due to become a kind of a brownfield in terms of commercial harbor, and you turn it a brownfield, or you're trying to turn it a brownfield into a new destination for the town. Interesting how you never mentioned building, and you mentioned all the words that we are actually using now when we discuss urban regeneration. So after that, then, I was bound to ask a question to Giuseppe, but I think I'll jump to Carlos first, because we had the chat and is very much into the relationship between project, architecture, space, and people. And I think what Fabiana was really talking about is making more of a human regeneration rather than just an urban regeneration. So, Carlos, would you tell us a bit about your approach when you say that what you're interested in is the relationship between the people and the space you design?
Was very impressed with your very long answer, and I kept thinking myself, what does this space look like, and what is the program of the space? And at first, I was listening very closely, and I thought, did I miss what the program is? Is there a park? Is there what type of activities will happen there? So I was already had an image in my head, and who's designing this space, and what could happen there. I work on a multitude of project types, from buildings to interiors to objects. But what the thread that pulls it all together is the individual, the human being, and how you can make a place that you are proud to be in, and it is invigorating to the individual, no matter what the age or the type of person you are. It is at the core of my work, but also the core of SOM. A lot of research and goes into all the projects to really understand what the background, what the history, what the purpose of a place is, and how you can be authentic to designing something new, as opposed to it being foreign and abstract and not connected to its previous existence. So going back to your project, I still want to know what is going to happen there. And I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm very interested in...
Before she answers the question, which I think is a very interesting one, we were chatting before, and you were mentioning a project which it really was very intriguing to me, about this effort you're making with the LA authority to design the new bus station, the
Yes.
bus stops.
Yep.
I know that I'm not unveiling anything secret, because you said it has become public a few days ago. And I know it doesn't necessarily refers to marinas and water, but in a way, it refers to the way the public space relates to people, services, and the neighborhood. So would you explain a bit more about this project?
Well, first, it's it's quite a large project. It's designing all new bus stops for the city of Los Angeles, and it's in development right now. The critical issue, while advertising is the main generator, and you know that you would go to your large fashion brands, automotive, and they would go in the very wealthy neighborhood so that they can attract the money that they're looking for. It was critical to the city and to the group that equity was the driver to all of this, and that it was equal throughout the whole city of what we deliver to, if you know the different neighborhoods of Los Angeles, South LA, East LA, which is the Latin communities, the Black communities, and those became the focus of it. We didn't even look at the more prominent neighborhoods, which they will get attention too, but right now we're focused on bringing up the quality for the transit riders that are the main users of the bus stops. If you know LA, that's about 12 million people in the metro area, 6 million registered cars. These are facts I've pulled off recently off the internet. So there's a car for every, or half a car for every person, or one car for every two people. That's a lot of cars, and politely saying the public transportation is an emerging industry. It hasn't been cared for it's been not high on the list, so hopefully our efforts will give attention to that. So it's a great project, and diversity of Los Angeles that we can deliver to all the neighborhoods. And then the aesthetics, coming from SOM, if you know SOM, people have an idea what this would look like, and it's nothing of that nature. And we kind of created a very simple structure that then we hope to collaborate with artists and fashion designers, whoever it may be, that we can represent different cultures, different communities, or create communities if you take a square mile, sorry, from the United States. We want to really tie together neighborhoods and really be representative of the people that live there.
And if I remember well, you were mentioning that the bus stops will also become service areas for pickup of deliveries, and there's a series of other things which you're adding on to it, which in a way is helping to generate the kind of neighborhood relationship that it may be somehow missing as you live in single houses.
Yep. It's, ideally, it moves into a term we're using called a mobility hub, so that the initial effort includes hydration stations, the scooter docks, and e-lockers. E-lockers is really critical because of the amount of the single-family homes all through LA, which is very large. You have Amazon going to everyone's house, and the amount of gas and effort that goes into it. It can start to be consolidated at these bus stops so that the transit rider can grab their item before they go to their house. The most theft is happening in Los Angeles due to all of the apartment buildings that have no secured storage, so they get delivered in the front door and they're stolen. So now they can go to an e-locker. Also planning for the future in which drones can deliver to the e-lockers. Then you get on your scooter to take your last mile to your home. So it's a whole system that we are starting to develop.
Well, thank you. And now, Giuseppe, before Fabiana will answer your question, but so we'll leave that for later on. I think I know a bit what you're doing, so I think the question comes very easy. You are a developer, but the developments you're looking after are very much connected with the local communities, the local stakeholders, and the institutions, the land institutions. So what can you tell us, what can we learn from your experience coming back from Dubai, so from a totally different world where I think you worked for 7 years, and now been sort of thrown back into a difficult and old country? What can you tell us about your experience?
Thrown back to reality, I would add. So thank you for having me tonight, Leo. It's a real pleasure to be here. So to answer your question, first of all, Marina Development Corporation aims to develop local destination to be the most desirable marina destinations in the Mediterranean. So quite an ambitious plan. Although when you start analyzing, the data, you start to understand that there is a real lack of destination by marinas. In the whole Mediterranean, we have more than 900 marinas, but very few destinations. And often a marina, as Fabiana was mentioning, disconnected from the city center. And this is what we are trying to do. We are filling the gap. We're filling the gap for the benefit of the city, obviously, in order also to, enhancing the operation of the marina by creating synergy with the real estate component. So this is what we do, and the social aspect is key for what we do, because, you go in a city, and by the way, when I mention local communities, I mean it. We go exactly in secondary destinations, and local as opposite of global, because we believe there is so much great value in the Mediterranean in local communities that we want to keep it as it is. We want to enhance what they have to offer. We want to solve as much as we can the issues that we find. And in order, to start and planning, we go through, very deep analysis, not just the normal technical due diligence that any developer does, but also a social understanding, scouting of what the people want there, what are their desires, and the issues. So we try and then to solve the issues as much as we can. For instance, in Ventimiglia, where we work with One Works, they are leading the planning. We realize there is a drainage in the culture. The local education, sorry, more than culture. Education is lacking there. So we propose to develop an international school, and it was quite successful. You know, obviously the people understood the value of it, and even the operators that we are dealing with, international operators, they see the lack in offering and the great potential of the place. So it was, you know, almost an easy deal to reach. Even at the beginning, we couldn't, you know, imagine that. And then when you have such a support from the local community, which is key, as I mentioned, because, you know, what we do, the urban regeneration, in essence, is always subject to the political will, at least in Italy. So that's a starting point for us. And what we do also to enhancing the local value, placemaking. So even before, you know, laying bricks, we start pushing what they have to offer, the historical value of the location. Ventimiglia, it's a beautiful place. They have the largest upper town in Liguria, which is the whole region, after Genoa. So we want to bring that to the global demand, so by keeping the local essence of it, but for an international public. So recently we launched a photo exhibition of Steve Macccarini on food, 70 shots. And during the exposition, which will last until beginning of September, we will have a series of events on food. So that's definitely you know, a strength of the place. The food is one of the best in Italy, in the region. And this is what we want to bring to the attention. And the people, local people, they see the value that we bring to the city with the additional tourists coming over. So that's for us.
Just to add on this, what I really found interesting in your approach, and is that beside the hard work of a developer, which is developing a site, actually 2 sites in this case, with also the schools and the sports destinations, you have a series of soft activities which you do across town, from exhibitions to the restoration of a little building in the city center to the opening of 2 shops somewhere else, and then a program to review the beach side. So I was really shocked by this, I would say, holistic approach to the town, which is not just about the hard development, which is, of course, there, and is probably the one who is allowing you to sort of finance all the other soft activities. But the soft side of your activities is not the usual approach of a typical developer, at least from my experience. So that, I think, if you could sort of just go a little bit more into that and tell us about the different bits you're looking after, I think it'd be very interesting for the public.
Yes. Soft approach for us, it's what I mentioned earlier, is placemaking, as we call it. So beyond the photo exhibition that we just launched, we started it with a photo book of the upper town, which through a known photographer, and the result was amazing, you know, for the general public and especially for the local community. They felt celebrated. And I think there is much value in this work. And then the opening of F&B retails, which are not instrumental for the success of the business plan itself. They are almost marketing activities, but they also, you know, bring value to us for what's coming next and for the local people. So we have 8 openings in plan, 1 already accomplished last year. It's an ice cream shop in an Art Nouveau building. We renovate completely the interior to be consistent with the historic facade of the building. So it's really a piece of cake in terms of, you know, ice cream shop, artisanal ice cream shop. By this summer, we're going to open 2 more restaurants, and they're all linked by the same essence, which is the quintessential Italian lifestyle. So we want them to be entirely local, in the offering, and Italian, you know, by definition. And then, you know, beside, obviously, I didn't even mention the core of the development, which will be building a destination by the newly built marina in front of our land bank, which will have apartments and hotel. We also acquire the land where we can tap into this for the index that will transfer on the waterfront, and for the public general standards, which basically are parkings and green areas. But then we were left with this plot. And only after, you know, analyzing what's really the critical issues for the place, we came out with the school. We didn't think it was an easy route to take, but then apparently it's working very well.
Thank you very much. I think it's interesting how we are discussing really more about software of the town more than the hardware of the town. And I think this is possibly a good way to discuss sustainability and social sustainability. But I want to go back to Carlos for the question to Fabiana. So if you could just repeat your question and then start a conversation among yourselves.
What are you designing? And who's designing it?
Actually, One Works is actually designing part of our buildings. I forgot to talk about buildings just because, you know, I'm a marina operator, so I'm more focusing on the seaside, but we have actually a big developer from Dubai that is developing all the real estate buildings. Actually, they just launched the project yesterday, so there is a part of the city that is going to be developed. It's not just few buildings, it's actually a quarter of the city that is going to be developed. And it's a mixed-use residential building. Of course, the sea is a must because, as Giuseppe was saying, I mean, when you develop something overlooking the sea, it definitely immediately has a higher value. But what we are looking for is not just the real estate component, which is really important because, of course, it creates the life around the destination. But we really want to have a place where people not only live, but also works. And we are trying to create the boating lifestyle there, the yachting ecosystem, I would say, where we have not only people living there and enjoying the sea, but we want to have people working there, enjoying there, making business there, creating the yachting ecosystem around the place to be for people that is working around this industry. So that's the kind of holistic approach that we are trying to create.
In terms of, I like your word, was it soft design, soft objects, soft. One thing that comes to mind, I'm still trying to envision what you're working on. The scale, Dubai always seems very large in terms of to cross the street and to get to the next building. Will there be access to the water? You know, whether you're going to a boat or get in the water, and is there open space, parks that are part of this development?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm not designing the upland part, but that's absolutely, I mean, there is access direct to the water. One of our, let's say, pillar project in our development that is actually under the design of One Works is the Yacht Club and the Water Sport Academy. So we really wanted to create these two elements, not because they are big business for us, but because they attract people to be connected to the water. So when we want to attract young generation to come to the Water Sport Academy to enjoy the sailing activities, the water sport activities, and to become so connected to the sea that they ideally, eventually they will decide to live there because that's the only way, the only place where you want to decide to live. So access to the water is a must, and parking areas, of course, is there. But even more, we are creating a kind of connection by sea. sea. Dubai, as you said, is quite spread along the coast, and we have a lot of projects from along the coast, a lot of waterfront projects. So we are working with the government and with the Road Transportation Authority to develop more and more connection by sea, water taxi system, and because you have two different kind of effects. One is that it's easier to go from one side to the other, is much more enjoyable because going by sea is much better than going through highway, and you can enjoy easily.
You're talking to a guy from LA.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very familiar with that. So yeah, I mean, the access to the water is a must, and also living in the water is a must.
Yeah. I think it's great.
So that's the I hope I
So,
have
Carlos, you were bound to give us a presentation, and then we discussed that wasn't the case. But then you were maybe afraid of not having the presentation with you to show us. But as you hear, everybody is talking about people, which is the first word you told me when you came into the office. And it's quite incredible, well, maybe not among architects, but definitely with developers. So it looks like the world is changing, and which I think is good. And we're trying to, no, I think architecture without people is of no sense. There's no need for architecture if there's no people around. So, but would you maybe give us a bit more of your view of the projects you're doing? I know you're actually working on something we consider in this country and in Europe something a usual task, but maybe not in the US, and is becoming, as I hear, an interesting topic in Dubai too, which is repurposing, retrofitting, renovating. So talking about sort of leveraging on the existing as a value. And it's interesting that it comes also, I mean, it's so familiar in Europe and particularly in Italy that we don't discuss it. But, you know, we probably did 2 projects out of a greenfield in 30 years. But it's interesting that from Dubai and also from the words we've exchanged a couple of hours ago, even from LA, so that the car city in the US, you're actually discussing those topics. Would you mind telling us a bit more about this topic and your job?
Throughout my career, I've always worked on renovations and repurposing of buildings, and now we have our own, a separate group or a group at SOM that the word we use is adaptive reuse. So there's many words for it. And, you know, it's whether it's a global trend or an American trend, it's something I've always been interested in, but it has come to the forefront for sustainability purposes, first and foremost environmental, but reusing what you're doing as opposed to tearing down and building new. And being that, to politely say, being that we're a newer country, the richness in the architecture may not be there that you have in Europe and especially in Italy. So just getting some texture, just to make the place feel authentic and unique, as opposed to new construction, which can tend to not have much flavor. I think it's really important to, the inhabitant, the individual needs to be interested in the place they're working in, they're living in, they're playing in, drinking, whatever it may be. So design is very important to create those spaces. And I believe when doing these adaptive reuses and renovations, you already have that texture and that this image that allows for the space to be interesting. And I think that is very important, that there's some uniqueness to it that doesn't feel that it's the same in every country or every city or every neighborhood. So it's critical.
Building on history,
yes,
and
yes,
heritage.
Yes.
I think we'll have a few minutes left. And Giuseppe, you mentioned one word which I put down, desire, which is something that we all know what it means, but not necessarily use as we discuss projects or developments. But I think it's a quite relevant word because it goes with people again. It goes with the desire of people and the different communities that may be interested in what you're doing. And also, you mentioned another thing which is, to me, very interesting coming from a developer. You work out to secondary destinations. So putting together desire and secondary destinations, can you sort of tell us a little bit more, a few words about the overall strategy of the company when looking at developments, but taking care of those two very fragile words, desire and secondary destinations?
Thank you, Leo, for the question. Let me first of all answer to your bias towards developers, which I felt at the beginning. So, developers. Exactly. So developers, they're all moving like us from a customer-centric planning to a people-centric planning, which must involve, the local community as well as the customers, obviously. Customers for us are the buyers of the residential properties, the visitors, and the guests of our hotels.
I was pushing you to
Exactly. That was a provocation. But I'm ready, because this is a very common bias, which us developing secondary destination are exposed to quite often. The local press, even the public opinion. So how do we answer to this? By just studying, analyzing the outcomes on what we do. That's crucial. And then it's not only analyzing, it's not enough. You have to communicate. That's crucial from the very beginning. So you need to communicate the expected outcomes on what you do. And we did so with a third party, obviously, so independent party, Nomisma in Italy. And the facts are astonishing. Every euro that we're going to spend in Ventimiglia will generate 3.5 euro. So over a total of 200 million worth investment, that's more than $500 million for the economic impact for the city. We're talking about a city of 24,000 inhabitants, so very small town. And same applies to Pisa as well, where we have our second project, which was recently acquired. It's a larger project. It's almost twice the size of Ventimiglia, but the local community is completely different. So you need to also adapt to what are the expectations. And to answer your question, since we put the people in the center of what we do, we need to know what the people expect, what they want, what are their issues. So as I was mentioning at the beginning, the issue in Ventimiglia is tourism, is not a touristic destination. So we want to contribute to put Ventimiglia on the map. This is the essence of what we do, to compete with Sanremo or Menton or Cannes. And now we do that with the mix of functions, with the activity that we bring on site, with the glamour also that F&B will bring to the place, and then jobs. We're going to create jobs. That's definitely for the place. It's very important. The occupancy rate is not that high because of lack in tourism, and also the expat going to Monaco. They decreased dramatically in the past few years, from 12,000 to 4,000 nowadays. So why? Because also Monaco is evolving. They're expecting a much higher level of service. And so we are proposing schooling. We're proposing classes on site for people who want to upgrade their hospitality skills. So obviously, there are proper schools for that, but for people who are working during the day, you are offering this night session, and they are quite successful as well. English courses as well. English is now paramount in tourism and is really lacking there. You know, very few people speak English over there. So we are now at the second edition of English classes at the city. And in September, we are going to start the hospitality classes as well. So that's the value that we really bring to people from now, not just at the end of the project.
Thank you, Giuseppe. So we've opened the session with Fabiana. We're going to close the session with Fabiana. And I think following what Giuseppe was saying, when you were describing your project, apart from the words that we sort of discussed before, you've also mentioned citizens. And when I hear citizens, I understand the sort of general public and not necessarily people who have an interest in coming to your place. So in a city which for at least 20 years was built on the idea of a private city, you are now, looks like that you are designing a proper public space, which is something which has been going on in Dubai, I have to say, for some time now with the parks and the idea of the public spaces. But you as a developer and operator of marinas, you were discussing your project like it was a public square of a public destination rather than a business, which I guess is behind it, I hope. But you put your focus and values on the public side of the story with a degree of openness, which is quite high. I mean, citizen for me is a word that implies just everybody. Everybody and not just the community, which implies a common interest, but citizens may not have anything in common, but they're still building society. So can you just finish off our talk with going a bit deep into that?
Sure. Actually, yes, I mentioned on purpose citizen because usually when we, referring to Dubai, we know that local Emirati is just a minority and 90% of the people is expat, and we have more than 85 nationalities, I think. So today, what we want to create, and is our also responsibility as a government company, is to create a public space. And we don't want to create any more a place where you have only Western people and Indian people and Filipinos, and because this is the tradition, the pattern of Dubai. So this place want to be for everybody, and more than ever, we want to attract local Emirati community that is traditionally very separated from the rest of the citizen. So today Dubai, is quite established destination and a capital of multicultural and ethnicity. I would say that one of the most famous example in the world to have all this nationality working together, living together, and we want to, again, going back to sustainability, we want to create this connection and for any kind of nationalities, and especially the local Emirati that originally are quite separated from the other communities. So yes, our project want to be public, want to be open to, want to be for the Emirati and Dubai citizen, and of course want to be for tourists and attract people from all over the world, to become a destination as well. So it's a public place.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to you three. Thank you. Was, I think, very interesting. It was at least very interesting for me to carry out this discussion, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. I think time is over now, so thank you very much, and let's go down for a drink together to make it a very social night as well.
Thank you.